you're a contemporary of Bernstein. What do you think are some of the legacies for education of his work?
This is a complicated issue because he wrote on so many things, so let me choose a few. First is his analysis of the crucial importance of particular kinds of educational phenomena to social and cultural reproduction. So there was no one, I think, wiser than he was about these kinds of things. Even though he was fundamentally structural, I think overly structural at times, which is odd coming from me, and had this vision of things as binaries. In spite of the criticism that might be made, there is no one wiser than he was. I think that for me, one of the major issues in his contributions would be his reassertion of class as a fundament, as a cultural category, not just an economic category. That's major. Finally, I think that because of the elegance of his work, he actually brought respect back to the sociology of education, and especially the sociology of curriculum. So before that, issues of pedagogy, issues of curriculum were seen as epiphenomenal. They were less important. We had to only talk about the economy. And his refocusing of that placed the things I think that those of us in education are deeply concerned about back at the center. And I know no one who was better at it than he was.
Are there any tools or concepts that stand out in your mind of the things that you've taken forward?
Well, let's take as an example. Throughout my work, I have argued that the form of the curriculum becomes just as important as the concept, as the concrete knowledge itself, the content. That is, I had worked on that before, but the parallel between my work and Basil's, his theorization of that was very helpful to me, very, very helpful. I come from a tradition of anti-racist work. I was, before it was called Freedom Riders, I was one of the people trying to desegregate U.S. schools. But I also come from a family that was deeply political around class relations. And I say this because that means that I approach Basil's work in looking for particular kinds of things. So in a book such as Educating the Right Way, I argue that there are a number of social mobilizations and movements that have formed the hegemonic bloc. And I said, look, there's neoliberals, neoconservatives, and authoritarian populists, sort of religiously affiliated fundamentalists and evangelicals throughout the world that are very powerful. But a fourth group is the new middle class, those people in charge of cultural reproduction. And I say that class fraction must be taken very, very seriously. And almost all of class analysis in education ignores that. So from Bowles and Gintis, that it's working class, ruling class, two classes count. I want to reject that. I think that's simplistic and overly mechanistic. And Basil's original work, and it is original, on the importance of sort of cultural class fractions who control cultural redistribution, cultural reproduction. I took that and ran with it, then focusing on the way in which that class fraction has colonized the space of the state around policies and practice. So audit cultures, for instance, and all of Stephen Ball's work on that, Stephen's a dear friend, I think can be traced back to the relative autonomy of the new managerial class. So that was profoundly important for me. It opened the space for me to take the class analysis I was engaged in and then refocus it on the state. So that's something that I owe Basil a good deal. I want to incorporate that further than he did about the way in which that class as a form of employment works. And I want to merge that with someone he had a vexed relationship to, and that was Bourdieu. Since Basil spent some time with Bourdieu in Paris and felt that he was not respected enough. And again, I have immense amount of respect for Basil and also for Pierre. you'll forgive the first names, but I was in debates with Bourdieu. So there's that. Finally, there's the way I grow is I need something to react against as well as to. That is, so at the same time as Basil is teaching me, I was in arguments with him. I don't think he understood teaching. I think it was too structural. When he finally got to the point about identities, he got it through Foucault, as if people weren't talking about teaching and identities for half a century before that. So I needed to remind him of the power of curriculum studies in the United States, doing powerful work before he understood these kinds of things. And I had to argue with him about the contradictions in the way in which lived culture operates, because Basil had to withdraw from lived culture in order to theorize it. And as I mentioned, his theories are brilliant, but they needed to be recentered. So I had to remind him of the epistemological commitment to work on your theories in relationship to the object. Now that's complicated, and then I'll stop. Because I know no one better of theorizing experiences. That was his job. I mean, that's what he was about. But it didn't re-enter. It was kept at too structural a level. So because I was president of a teachers union and I come to this out of being a teacher, he and I would go round and round about whether it was sufficient to always stay at that level, of the level of the abstraction. So I have an epistemological commitment to test out the abstractions in daily life. But on the other hand, he respected that, and our debates, I still have, in the second edition of Class Codes and Control, volume 3, he has all these diagrams. I still have my napkins from 2 bottles of wine. I have no memories of it, but I have the napkins of the 2 bottles of wine, diagrams that became part of that book. So he delighted in those debates. I cherish that.